is Harold the cat. He is 13 years old, loves cuddles, and, if you're lucky, will make biscuits, which, for those of you who aren't familiar, means he'll knead on a surface with his paws to show he's happy. The relationship that I have with Harold is one that provides me with understanding, mutual affection, and joy, a sentiment I imagine is echoed by many pet owners. But what if I were to tell you that Harold is not my pet cat, but rather, he is a stray cat who lives entirely outside and who I met a little over 12 months ago? I'm sure it would seem hard to imagine that in such a short period of time, a cat who roamed the world mostly alone and whose main daily goal was survival could transform into a cat whose new priority seems to be wooing you into giving him treats. However, this transformation did occur, and during the process, I found I had my own metamorphosis, not only in the way I thought about my connection to animals, but to humans as well. Last year, I was home on winter break after my first semester of freshman year at college. Like many college freshmen, I found the transition to life away from home and family difficult, and I was struggling to form meaningful connections. By chance, a family friend suggested I come over to her yard sometime to meet a stray cat whom she would feed and spend time with. I was intrigued by this prospect, as growing up I had always been fond of animals, yet never was able to own one due to my dad's allergies. However, as a naturally anxious child, I can now retrospectively perceive how much more at ease I would feel when in the company of animals I would encounter by chance in daily life. Until Harold, my animal bonds, much like my human ones, were surface level and lacked deep understanding. Upon entering our friend's backyard to see if Harold would by chance be there that day, I was overcome with glee when I spotted his tiger-like coat from a distance. I actually jumped up and down with excitement on my finding him, and of course, him being so cute. My mother quickly attempted to quell these energetic reactions and reminded me that I needed to be calm around Harold, especially when meeting him for the first time, so as not to scare him. This was the first of many moments of realization I would have about the necessity to think outside my own perspective and put myself in Harold's shoes, or paws. After a few cautious pets and some encouraging rubs against my leg, I was already feeling excited and intrigued to learn a whole new language of communication. As I left, I experienced the rare phenomenon of blinky eyes from Harold, the slow opening and closing of a cat's eyes that our friend reassured us was a cat's way of telling you that they like you. I continued to visit Harold every day, sometimes multiple times a day. As much as I wanted to hold him, I knew that by listening to his cues, the moment when he would be ready for that was yet to come. For the first month or so, I only pet him. There would be times when I would contemplate about lifting him up a bit and seeing his reaction, but I was always sensitive about not catching him off guard. I had learned from a slightly misplaced hand while petting him as he lay on his back that any touching on or even near the stomach was off limits. After all, Harold did substitute his cat food diet with many unfortunate birds and rodents, and any moving target near his body could be an opportunity for a meal or to defend against a predator. As someone who was mostly alone and didn't have many friends to pick up on social cues from, it was unfamiliar territory for me to be so in tune with another being's feelings, especially the unarticulated ones. However, I did find common ground with Harold in that the fight or flight response that I had been taught to suppress in relation to my anxiety was something that was present and essential in his daily life. Whether it be another cat who had mistakenly wandered into his territory, an opportunity to fight, or a loud car going by on the street, an opportunity for flight, Harold employed these reactions in a way that was natural and appropriate to his environment. This really put in perspective how moments where I had previously felt the urge to take flight out of fear were actually moments of relatively small danger compared to Harold's feats. Finally, the day came where I observed that Harold was in a comfortable mood, and I slowly put my hands under his shoulders to lift him up. I hesitated for a moment as my hands rested there, expecting a flight, but I observed that his muscles were relaxed and he was ready for me to hold him. I slowly placed him on the chair in my lap, and a look of pure shock spread across my face. I had known from our friend that whenever holding Harold, it was important that he face outwards so that he could see his surroundings and guard against any potential danger. Every succeeding time I held him, I always placed him in this position, and whenever he would jump onto my lap, he would always settle himself in this way. Where a friend might tell you, "I will always look out for you," Harold would simply convey this notion by facing outwards, head on a swivel. When I returned back to school, I would constantly find myself looking forward to when I would come home and visit Harold. Outside of academics, Harold gave me an opportunity to learn about the fundamentals of relationship building. However, just as with any relationship, there would be days when we were out of sync. On those days, I would acknowledge that he might need some distance, and that even a small pet, which I had come to take for granted, was not something that he wanted. Soon, Harold became a stable part of my identity, and I find myself relying on the presence I gained from being with him. When navigating new relationships with humans, now armored with my experience with Harold, I realized that humans, much like animals, all came with different comfort levels, especially when you were becoming newly acquainted with them. I could relate the amount of moderation and upward progression needed when forming a relationship with a stray cat as synonymous to forming a relationship with a new human who, like Harold, would not automatically assume the status of lifelong friend. I didn't need to look inward and question my own worth, but rather needed to look outward, as all I sought to gain came from listening to the other. With this new view in mind, I realized that my heart raced a little bit less in social situations. In fact, it was nothing compared to Harold's heart rate when running from danger in the wild. What I want to stress about my experience is that while it may seem very personal to my circumstances, each one of you can have this sort of relationship if you are truly open to all of the unique ways that it can manifest. If you are already a pet owner, you can always find new ways to develop your relationship with your pet and consider how it informs the natural progression and shifts that occur in your relationships with your family and friends. Maybe by being more attuned to cues from your animal and realizing that communication for them might look different than communication for you, you can realize the depth of ways that you can reciprocally increase each other's well-being. It is a common known truth that animals have the power to brighten our days, but how often do we realize that the relationships we form with them can have larger implications on the relationships that we form with humans? And for those of you who, like me, are not pet owners, I ask if you can look for ways in which serendipitous, even unlikely animal encounters, no matter how small, can enter into your daily life and enhance the way you think about your own mental health and relationships. For example, did you know that a recent Cornell University study found that petting a cat for just 10 minutes a day can decrease cortisol, a stress hormone, and this is consistent with the notion that spending time with cats can reduce anxiety. And for those of you who don't consider yourself cat people, which I might add may perhaps warrant a reconsideration, a Center for Disease Control and Prevention study found that children who did not own pet dogs were 9% more likely to test positive for anxiety. These animal connections can span beyond what we would normally think of as domesticated animals and apply to those fleeting, magical moments we have with animals in nature. Whatever the species, wild, domesticated, or stray, a human-animal connection can pull two forces together so they can mutually heal, grow, and cause even the human's relationship with other people to be astray no longer. Thank you.